and welcome to AiArthritis Voices 360. This is the official talk show for the International Foundation for Autoimmune or Autoinflammatory Arthritis, or AiArthritis for short. And my name is Layla P.L. Valete, and I am your host today. I'm a person living with lupus and Sjögren's disease, and I am the health education manager here at AiArthritis. And today we have a very special episode. It's going to be our 2025 highlights episode, where we select 3 clips from the top viewed episodes of the year and let you have a recap on some of those if you haven't listened to them yet, so you can get a little taste of what our best shows of the year were. So stay tuned for the outro and all of the clips to come. And at the end, I'll let you know what the call to action is for the end of this episode. So thank you so much and stay tuned. This first clip is from episode 107, and that is parenting with AiArthritis diseases. And we have an amazing host, Eileen Davidson, or Chronic Eileen, who is a popular rheumatoid arthritis blogger, as well as the educational media assistant here at AiArthritis. And there's also a special guest, her son, who talks about having a parent with chronic illness. And so stay tuned for this clip that talks a little bit about Eileen's story and how rheumatoid arthritis and living with that disease shaped her parenting.
My biggest struggle living with rheumatoid arthritis and being a parent is that I really struggle with fatigue. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis when my son was almost 2 years old. And my disease was there before my pregnancy, but after my pregnancy is when it really kind of became apparent that I had something going on. And it was after my pregnancy that I thought, the swelling would go down, my mental health would get better, I wouldn't be so tired, I could lose the weight. The pain that I felt during my pregnancy also didn't really go away. So I remember being at work and trying to work as a single mother too. I split with my kid's father when he was 1. We remain friends, actually very good friends now. So I'm grateful for that. But I am a single parent. So a lot of this is, all the parenting is on my shoulders, which can be a challenge. Even if I have help some days, there's 5 days, 6 days of the week I don't really have help. And as my son has gotten older, he is my help. But I remember when I was about 2 years after pregnancy, I felt really off. All the symptoms of being constantly fatigued and the reoccurring infections and the brain fog. I was working as an esthetician, and I used to be really good at my job. Physically could handle it quite well, but then I couldn't. I was in the back room after each service in tears and just really struggling. And I remember asking for a rheumatoid arthritis blood test. I was about 29 years old then. This was in 2015, so 10 years ago now. And my doctor told me I was, probably too young, and she just kind of brushed me off. We've all experienced medical gaslighting before, so it's nothing new. But, I'm grateful that I advocated for myself because my test came back positive. I had rheumatoid arthritis. And it was things in my parenting that were really apparent to me that I did have something going on, because I struggled to hold my son for a long period of time. I really struggled with him constantly, when the babies wake up a lot during the night. Like, I really struggled with that. It would leave me really fatigued. Of course, I thought that was, just being a new parent, but it was actually affecting me even worse because I had a diagnosed untreated rheumatoid arthritis during, the time when he was a little baby who woke up several times for feeding in the night. So that was really difficult. And then things like strapping him into a car seat or strapping him into a stroller was difficult. And then when he was really young, and I was super fatigued. I felt like I needed naps all the time. So I had a lot of guilt around not being as, I guess, like involved as a mom as I wanted to be. All my expectations of parenting kind of went out the window when I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. Um, and I think my biggest issue when he was little was I'd have to put him up on my, while I slept, I'd lie down on the couch. I'd put him on my lap and I'd give him a tablet to play with because I could feel him if he were to uh, get off me. So then I'd wake up. I'm a very light sleeper, thankfully. And I just felt really bad because I was like, am I parenting by throwing a screen at him? But I had sometimes no choice because I was so fatigued and so tired or so sick or trying to come off, side effects of medications or the extreme depression that also started after my diagnosis too. So there was a number of things that made parenting challenging, especially at the beginning. And over time, those challenges have changed. My son, now 12, is far more helpful and he can take care of himself a lot of the time. I don't need to do as many of the things that I had to do for him when he was a baby, which at times I miss, but then also at times I'm like, my body doesn't want to do that again. Which is one of the reasons why I only have one child too. I thought, well, my body and I struggle this much. I don't want to have another kid. Especially as I get older, my arthritis gets worse. So yeah, the challenges have changed over time. Now I see he gives me a little bit of pushback when I ask for help, because he is entering, preteen years, and they don't want, mom or dad asking them to do things, and he kind of goes up and down with it. Sometimes he's very good with offering help right away. Sometimes he's more hesitant, and sometimes he just does helpful things because he's seen how arthritis has affected me over the years. He already knows it's like ingrained in his head to do some of these things. Like, I'm tired, to let me just rest. I'm having a hard time opening something, he'll open it for me. I need to bring something downstairs, he'll bring it down the stairs for me. Things like that. And sometimes he's even my own personal cheerleader who will say things like, I'll maybe say something negative or say, oh, I can't do that because of my pain or I can't help out much. He'll remind me that I do so much more other than, what's physical. I take care of him. I, pay for his food, his clothing, all that stuff. So he's very grateful for the things that I can do. Now, I guess if I were to have any advice for any parents who are struggling with their chronic illness and parenting, you have to be comfortable with yourself. The first step is to let go of any expectations that you had of what a parent should be like or what other parents are like. Don't listen to those parents that go to your kid's school that are not going through chronic health issues, or if they do have a chronic health issue, maybe it affects them differently than you. We're all living our own unique journey. Don't feel guilty for putting yourself first because you can't run on empty. You do need to take care of yourself before you can take care of your little one. You cannot let your battery completely drain. Guilt does you no good. Don't let it consume you. You have to own yourself and your flaws. We can't always be perfect, and we might forget to pick our kid up one day because of brain fog, or we find that we had to miss a recital or a game or a practice because fatigue was too much or pain was distracting. So yeah, we can't let that guilt us, and we have to own it. We have to take note of how our little ones will also mirror us. One thing I've noticed out living with a chronic illness is I'm very much interested in, anti-inflammatory foods and exercise and living very healthy and understanding how, to be healthy. That has mirrored onto my son, which is really great. I didn't really have that influence as a kid. I didn't know how to eat healthy. I didn't know how to exercise. I didn't have actually the biggest support network while growing up. So um, it was actually really challenging for me after my diagnosis to figure out how to be healthy every day, what I needed to do to take care of myself and manage this disease. Some of their practical advice I have is always keep organized, write everything down, develop a routine with rest included in it. You have to pace yourself and delegate tasks, and you always go with simple and what works best for you. Batch cooking has been a complete game changer for me in meal prepping. Some days I'm just way too tired to cook a meal. And if I want to eat something that's particularly healthy that my kid isn't into, for example, he doesn't like beans. I love beans. I can prep some bean dishes for myself, or I can prep some healthy meals for him, instead of having to cook 2 meals every night. And you know what? If you're late, you're late. If your place is messy, it's messy. You can't be perfect all the time. Bending the rules gonna happen. Chronic illness is bumpy. So it's okay to just take things as they go. And you know what? It's okay to be overwhelmed and ask for help. I think asking for help has been one of the things that have helped me get through being a parent with chronic illness. And sometimes you ask for help and you get help where you least expect it, from, strangers or coworkers or friends that you connected to years ago, but they also live with an invisible illness, and if you're open about it, they might connect with you on a different level now. You always have to advocate for yourself. Always make sure you're on top of your meds, your appointments, and you're taking care of yourself.
In clip number 2, I have a conversation with Dr. Julius Birnbaum, who wrote a book about the neurological manifestations of lupus and Sjögren's disease, as well as how to empower patients who live with these diseases. And so it was a very interesting conversation. We talk a lot about all of the different things that have to do with the nervous system that can be affected by lupus and Sjögren's disease. So stay tuned for that clip and see what else we talk about. Maybe you can start with telling us a little bit about the neurological side effects of Sjögren's specifically. And I know that in the Sjögren section of your book, you talk a lot about neuropathies. Can you tell me a little bit about what that means?
So sure. So when neurologists use the term peripheral neuropathies, what's implied is a certain anatomy. So the peripheral nerves, for example, connect the spinal cord to the skin, to muscles. And when the peripheral nerves can become injured, it could cause weakness, but also a lot of what we call sensory symptoms, such as numbness and tingling. And there are also particular neuropathies, which are called small fiber neuropathies, which particularly cause a lot of neuropathic pain. So when I say neuropathic pain, patients might experience burning pain, patients might experience shot-like sensation, and patients might also experience extreme exquisity to touch. So for example, bed sheets at night rubbing against their feet can cause intolerable pain. So these are the type of pain that could occur in neuropathies, and we refer to them as painful neuropathies.
That's really interesting because I went to a talk at this past ACR as well that was about pain and talking about the different types of pain, neuropathies being a type of them, basically saying like some of the pain that AiArthritis patients or patients with these rheumatic diseases may have may also be very similar to the type that fibromyalgia patients have, which kind of seems like it's tying in similarly to what you're talking about with the peripheral neuropathy. I never really knew that peripheral neuropathy was an exact symptom or could happen from lupus. But the first time that I had a really big flare, they put me on gabapentin because I was having pins and needles. I was having all of this go on with my nervous system that I didn't really understand what was happening. But now that I put the two things together, I think that's what was happening, is that there was some neuropathy pain going on at that point when I was having that first big flare with lupus.
Yeah, and I'm just saying the neuropathy pain can be somewhat amorphous and difficult to understand because it's assault and so many different sensory symptoms. And the sensory symptoms can present with such an incredible heterogeneity of symptoms. So like you're describing with yourself, like the tingling, the numbness, that can happen. I think what happens also is that patients resort to language. Language could actually be, exquisitely lyrical. So I've had patients tell me that, if someone's taking a blowtorch to my feet, or, their feet are open when they're going in a body of ocean. And I think that when you use this intense language, what you're trying to do is convey to your physicians how much you're suffering. And physicians, by their training, are used to telltale terms like tingling, numbness. So sometimes going off script and becoming more adept in understanding how these are personalized to you, that could actually lead to some symptoms becoming marginalized and even undiagnosed in certain ways.
Definitely. I just had a discussion with some of our volunteers about this exact thing, about one of the resources we should come up with is the different description words on how to describe your pain so that you can be a little bit more detailed when talking to your physicians, because that may be part of the problem, is just the breakdown in communication of what you were talking about. And basically, like, to kind of go into it a little bit more of a breakdown, there's a difference in the pain that we're talking about of like the numbness, tingling, burning versus a mechanical pain that may happen, say, if you sprain your ankle or if you have some other acute injury. The description words would be completely different. It'd be a sharp, tight pain, when
Exactly.
it comes to the, spraining your ankle or breaking your arm. And that's really important for patients to have that language that you're talking about, to be able to communicate what they're trying to say to the doctors.
Yeah, I think you're right. We use the term inflammatory pain. So like when you're seeing your ankle and it might be a sprain, like you're talking about, you'll see redness, you'll see warmth, you might see a bruise. So you could see the actual injury itself. When you have neuropathic pain, there's nothing that visibly you can see. You see your skin, and patients a lot of times understand, and they don't understand why it's so enigmatic. Like, where is it coming from? Where is the pain generator? So it's important to understand that in neuropathy, it's the nerves inside that connect muscles to spinal cord to skin. So you're right. There's a big difference between what you can see in inflammatory pain, like when you sprain your ankle, versus a neuropathic pain, which is actually invisible to the eye.
Yes. And we talk, a lot of these different diseases are invisible, like what you said. And so it can be really tough, even for patients themselves. You're like, am I really experiencing this pain? What is happening? Because we can't see it. So I think that can be really tough for some patients to deal with. And I think, like you were saying, kind of go explaining the difference between the central and the peripheral nervous system, with the central being the brain and the spinal cord, and the peripheral nerves being everything else that is going to be connecting your body parts to the central nervous system. And I think we talked a little bit about the neuropathies and Sjögren's. How does that differ with Sjögren's versus lupus? And I see that we may talk a lot about injury with spinal cords with lupus as well. Like, what's the breakdown of that?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of the neuropathies that are highlighted and better diagnosed in Sjögren syndrome, or Sjögren's disease, I should say, because Sjögren's has now appropriately changed its designation from a syndrome to a disease. I think that this reinforces to rheumatology wider community that it actually is something deservedly become called a disease. So let me emphasize that myself. So
Absolutely.
Sjögren's disease, it could cause a lot of different types of neuropathies. So the nerves themselves can be injured in different ways. So for example, we have tiny sized nerves that can be injured. And when these tiny sized nerves are injured, this is what we call a small fiber neuropathy. So again, the small fiber neuropathy gives rise to descriptors like we just talked about: burning pain, shock-like sensation, sensitivity to touch. And what happens and why small fibers neuropathies are undiagnosed is that they require special diagnostic testing. So the diagnostic test of choice in a small fiber neuropathy is to take a what we call a punch biopsy, which is a punch biopsy of the skin. And then pathologists look at this biopsy under a microscope. And what they try to understand is if small fiber nerves are making it to the top layer of the skinless, which is called the epidermis. So what pathologists can see in a small fiber neuropathy is that these tiny nerves, they wiggle in the skin layer, but they never try to get to the epidermal layer. So the epidermal layer is devoid of small fiber nerves, and this is what it's called a decreased nerve fiber density in the epidermis. And that's kind of the buzzword that we use to describe small fiber neuropathies. It requires special tests. And until recently, it was not recognized that these special tests needed to be done for small fiber neuropathies.
Wow, that's amazing to hear about. I think that's we never hear about the layers of what you're talking about when we think about our pain. And so I think just even understanding that information can help patients feel more empowered to talk about their symptoms and feel like it's a real thing as well.
Yeah, and what we do in our manuscripts, our research studies, is we actually try to get the biopsy slides and put into pictures what pathologists are seeing. Because you're right, I think it's very, very powerful to patients that they could have a certain anatomical locus and they could say, here's where my nerves are not working as they should. So once you have a visible portrait of how your small fiber neuropathies are being diagnosed, it helps reaffirm to you that, hey, what I'm experiencing is real and organic, and it's not just in my head.
Yeah, right. Like with lupus nephritis, you could get the biopsy of the kidney and you know exactly what class it's going to be. So it's like very similar. It's taking it as, the same way, like pain is being caused by these injuries and that's what's causing it. So I think yeah, like you said, like we both said, it's very empowering. In our last clip, I talk a bit about the mystery patient experience and how much AI arthritis is dedicated to helping those who are searching for a diagnosis of one of our diseases. It can be a really tough and long road in order to finally get a diagnosis. We talk about why it's so important to have early detection, early diagnosis, and we talk about a specific story of a patient who is going through this at this moment. So take a look at that clip. I want to move into a story that we received in the past few months of a mystery patient looking for a diagnosis. He gave me permission to paraphrase his story and change his name for privacy reasons. But nonetheless, we wanted to share his story because it's super relatable to maybe many of your journeys or many journeys that occur with AI arthritis diseases in general. So his story goes, my name is Steve, and for most of my life, I've been searching for answers. My chronic illness journey began when I was just 14. I dealt with multiple surgeries for pilonidal cyst disease, painful recurring infections near my lower back. After a major surgery at 16, the cysts were finally under control, but when I woke up, I couldn't put weight on my right foot. That moment marked the beginning of chronic pain that never really left. At 15, I was diagnosed with juvenile fibromyalgia. I completed an intensive rehab program, and for a short while, the pain improved, but it didn't last. Over the years, I bounced between providers, each offering different explanations, but none that truly fit. Rheumatoid arthritis was ruled out early. Imaging found a tiny bone tumor, but it turned out to be benign.
I was told I had snapping hip syndrome, then fibromyalgia again. At one point, my doctor believed I had an autoimmune disease. We ran tests. ESR, CRP, ANA, HLA-B27, but everything came back normal. Frustrated, I asked for referrals. Pain management labeled a chronic pain syndrome. Another provider said it was all in my head, but I knew better. My body was telling me something wasn't right. Emergency room doctors suggested inflammatory sacroiliitis, possibly even Crohn's disease with inflammatory arthritis. A gastroenterologist suspected celiac disease, but tests came back normal. Eventually, my CRP levels spiked significantly, and now I'm waiting for a colonoscopy to investigate further. Meanwhile, my rheumatologist found mild osteoarthritis in my knees, but dismissed the bigger picture. She blamed my symptoms on sleep apnea and depression. Even though I live with psychoaffective disorder, I knew this pain was real, not psychological. Therapists who understand chronic illness backed me up. Depression doesn't cause this kind of physical pain. Community support groups became a lifeline. Leaders from different patient organizations and friends with lupus and ankylosing spondylitis listened to my story. They believed me when doctors didn't. They saw the signs of inflammatory arthritis, possibly psoriatic arthritis with IBD involvement. Last year, I was also diagnosed with POTS after collapsing. It was validating to hear I finally have a diagnosis for at least one part of my struggles, but the full picture is still incomplete. I'm still waiting, this time for an MRI, to continue the search for answers. Through it all, my symptoms persist. Deep joint pain, bloody bowel movements, extreme fatigue, bloodshot eyes, itchy inflamed scalp. Movement eases my pain, rest makes it work. Steroids help, but aren't a permanent solution. I share my story because it reflects the journey of so many undiagnosed patients and those living in the unknown, fighting daily to be heard. And yeah, that is his story. And unfortunately, the story of many patients that we hear and get a lot of questions from here at AiArthritis. And unfortunately, it is so difficult to deal with these situations because every healthcare system is different. Every doctor is going to be different in what they think the signs and symptoms are, or what even warrants a referral. And I think that all we can do is really put together our experiences and give advice on how we were able to get our diagnosis once we were while we were on this journey. And during episode 90, when we were talking about these different personal journeys of diagnosis, that's when we ideated the mystery patient guide. And so we've created our mystery patient guide as a collection of advice, guidance, tips, information from different patients that have told their story to AiArthritis, as well as filled out some forms online that we've had out there for anybody diagnosed with our diseases to give advice to mystery patients. And this is a living document. We're always looking for more people to help contribute, help give any insider advice that can be helpful for those who are searching for answers. And we did give this patient our mystery patient guide to go over, and he gave us some great feedback that we were able to incorporate into it. And now we have version 3 of our mystery patient guide available for download at www.aiarthritis.org/undiagnosed. You'll be able to find all of our information about the mystery patient, our previous talk show episodes, as well as the form that you can also fill out to help give any advice to the mystery patients. And as you can see from this story, there's common themes that a lot of people go through with having to go to multiple specialists, maybe having normal labs and not being able to pinpoint what it might be because the labs seem normal at that time that they're being taken, pain, being dismissed over and over and over again, and a lot of misdiagnoses of fibromyalgia, or using psychological explanations or mental health explanations for these symptoms that they may be having. And so with all of these problems that we see in the diagnostic journey, we also, additionally to the Mystery Patient Guide, have had this overarching theme, overarching project, overarching initiative that we've been working on and that we've talked on the talk show about before, which is our auto plus inflammatory arthritis equals X or YZ project, where auto means the symptoms that are coming specifically from autoimmune or autoinflammatory disease, which are like rash, fever, flu-like symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, and inflammatory arthritis symptoms of joint pain, especially after times at rest, or swelling and redness in the joints. And so with those two types of symptoms, we hypothesize that it can be one of our 22 diseases, an AI arthritis disease, or can be two other diseases. One of them being fibromyalgia, which many people with AI arthritis diseases are double diagnosed with fibromyalgia or have it as a coexisting condition, or may have been misdiagnosed with that before. And as well as IgG4 related disease, which is a newer immune mediated disease that was thought to be a part of Sjögren syndrome before, that we are seeing being diagnosed and occurring a lot more after the discovery a few years ago. And so we are focusing this project on including the mystery patient guide, including this in the mystery patient guide to help let patients know that these symptoms plus these symptoms could equal these diseases, but as well as we want to create or we are in the process of creating healthcare provider education, whether that be a brochure, a little business card sized tool, or just information card for patients to be able to give to their primary care doctors, nurses, or maybe even physical therapists who are helping them with their pain, and just letting them know that, this is why I'm honing in on these diseases, is because many people who have these diseases, they started out just like me. My blood not showing that I may have these blood markers, my imaging not showing that I may have these diseases, but they wait, a few years, and it does get to that point where the blood is showing those markers. And just also letting them know how important early intervention, early detection is in terms of health outcomes after the diagnosis. We've seen that, and research has shown that in the first 6 months after initial onset of symptoms is a critical time to be able to receive proper treatment, because the faster you're able to get treatment, and specifically within those first 6 months, the higher the chance of remission is for those patients, and the lower the chance of developing comorbidities is as well. And so just really emphasizing this and making sure that we are spreading the word to as many people as we can.
And that is a wrap of 2025 and all of our episodes that came out this year. Thank you so much for supporting AI Arthritis Voices 360 talk show. We are so thankful that you are all here listening to our educational conversations and personal experiences of AI arthritis diseases. We look forward to all of the different conversations that we will be having in the new year. We're looking to welcome new co-hosts in the new year. So if you or anybody you know may be interested in becoming a co-host for this talk show, please send me an email at layla@aiarthritis.org. I would love to see any examples of you speaking or creating videos about your AI arthritis disease and your experience. And go ahead and email me again at Leila, Leila, at aiarthritis.org if that's something that you would be interested in. And as well as if you have any ideas for topics that patients would want us to discuss in the new year, you can go ahead and send me an email as well. So let me know any topics, any coexisting conditions, or any barriers that you may be having in your disease journey that you would want us to talk about and get some experiences from other patients. So that, again, if you are interested in becoming a talk show co-host, please send me an email or send me an email with any ideas that you might have for new topics in the new year. And again, at AiArthritis, we don't just represent the patient voice, we are the patient voice. And with your support, we can amplify it even further. If you found value in this talk show, consider making a donation to help us continue producing impactful conversations, bringing all stakeholders to the table to discuss patient-identified issues and patient-infused solutions. You can visit aiarthritis.org/donate and help us make a difference together. And thank you again for tuning into this episode of AiArthritis Voices 360. You can find AiArthritis on all major social media platforms at IFAiArthritis. And thank you again for the support that we have from our partners at Bristol Myers Squibb, who have supported this talk show over the past few years and help us, again, to help bring these impactful conversations to you all. And that's a wrap. We'll see you here next month on the next episode of AiArthritis Voices 360. Bye.